What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about obscure Canadian flags. Obscure Canadian flags. Why does Canada have obscure Canadian flags? That's my first question. America just pretty much has the American flag. I was looking into this earlier. Apparently, each of the United States, each state, does technically have a flag, which I didn't even know. Lord help me. I didn't even know that. I don't think anyone knows that. No offense to the states, but I live here so I can make offense to them. Anyway, as far as Canada goes, I don't know what these flags would really be for. Maybe the provinces or cities or territories, whatever you want to call it. I'm just trying to figure out why Canada would have so many flags. So many to make a list of obscure ones. So anyway, I'm interested. You got my attention. I'd like to know why. They're probably pretty cool. And they probably have some history to them, which I'd like to know. Which brings us, if I can stop rambling, to the video. Let's take a look.
Hello everyone, my name is JJ, and I thought today we would talk about some of the more obscure
I'm sorry, I have to pause it because that was the biggest aboot I've ever experienced. The way he said aboot was the most Canadian aboot I've ever heard. Sorry. Anyway.
My name is JJ, and I thought today we would talk about some of the more obscure flags of Canada. I already did a video about all of the provincial flags of Canada, so I thought...
Whoa, what are these? Crenshaw flags? What are all these? This is just another video I'm gonna have to watch. I didn't even know there was a part 1. Oh well, onward.
So I thought we would do something a little bit different today. We are going to look at some flags that are not associated with specific places in Canada, but are rather sort of symbolic representations of, groups of people, or history, or ideas. But just...
Huh. This is fascinating. It would have been nice to watch that other video first, I suppose, about flags of the different specific areas of Canada. But this is fascinating in its own way. This is about specific people and culture or things, events, with flags and meaning in Canada. This is not what I expected, but I'm not upset. I'm fascinated.
Just a heads up before I begin today.
America doesn't have anything like this that I can think of. That's kind of why I'm caught off guard. I don't know what to think.
Today's video is sponsored by our...
Oh, probably gonna skip his sponsor, sorry.
We'll talk more about Skillshare in a bit. So let us begin with some of the popular variations on Canada's beloved maple leaf flag, because...
Yeah, this flag is incredibly well known in America. Mostly because Americans are just obsessed with its design. It's so unique. The use of a maple leaf is iconic. Every American knows this flag inside and out. And I certainly didn't know there were variations of it, though.
Because the Canadian maple leaf flag is so iconic, it is very popular to make modified versions of it for different groups. For example, a lot of LGBT groups in Canada use a maple leaf flag with rainbow bars instead of the red one.
I mean, I don't know if it's a sign of the relationship between America and its different minority groups and different groups, but you don't see like a pride flag combined with an American flag in America. Like this. This is so nice how it's combined with the Canadian maple leaf design of the Canadian flag, showing like the unity of it all. You don't see this in America. Maybe that just says something about America. I won't get into it.
There have also been a lot of efforts to create an Aboriginal looking maple leaf flag for Native Canadians. You sometimes see ones with a sort of Indian chief type figure on the maple leaf, like...
Huh. I'm sure there's probably Native American flags as well. Native to the United States, America, the people who originally lived here, there probably are flags for them as well that I'm not aware of. Huh.
This one or this one. Then there is some variation on this where you kind of have the whole maple leaf flag run through a kind of indigenous pattern. You see this version
Yeah.
of the maple leaf once in a while too. This was designed by a guy in the 1990s who thought we needed a new version of the maple leaf to specifically acknowledge the French Canadians, which is
Huh. That's actually cool. I'm gonna roll it back a little. Yeah, the French Canadians would probably appreciate this, right? I know that's such an important part of Canada, especially Quebec, as I've learned recently. See, I'm learning. Anyway, this is just making me kind of sad for America because it seems like a lot of groups in America want to make a flag for their cause, but don't want to combine it with the American flag, which is kind of sad because it kind of shows a lack of unity there, I suppose.
which is what these blue bars are supposed to represent. This is sometimes rather presumptuously called the Canadian Unity flag. Then, of course,
Okay.
you have the Canadian pothead community who are very fond of doing this.
I should have seen this coming. I've never seen this. That's funny.
With the flag. I
It works. I mean, I'm sorry. It works so well with where the leaf should be. It's a different leaf. I get it.
personally find all of these rather offensive because one of the things you learn about when you study Canadian history was just how difficult it was for this country to settle on the maple leaf flag. Coming up with this precise design was a real struggle for Canada.
Huh. See, I would have never known this level of detail, this point of view, unless I had a Canadian explaining it to me right now. I would have just thought, as an American, I just would have been like, oh, cool, combining the Canadian flag with different groups and their designs, cool, shows unity. This is a whole other point of view I didn't even consider, where he's kind of pointing out the preciousness, the weight of the Canadian flag, the meaning behind the Canadian flag, and the idea that maybe it deserves to just be unmeddled with and be respected as its own design. That's very interesting. Kind of makes sense with what I was saying with the American flag. Maybe it's okay that there's no combination of flags in America. Although I think you could see either point of view here. But I'm very interested, and I'm glad that he brought this up. Just the fact that some people who are very like nationalistic, you might say, in Canada, are just like, hey, this is the Canadian flag. It represents all of us. It wasn't meant to be changed and tampered with. But I can see differing perspectives there.
And one of the reasons why we settled on this design was exactly because it was very bland and generic and inoffensive. Canada's flag is actually quite unusual among flags of the world in that it does not contain any official symbolism. Nothing on the flag represents anything in particular. It is just a flag that represents Canada.
Yeah, that was one thing. I had an old video where I reacted to the Canadian flag. And that is, one thing I noted about it at the time was it's so simple and straightforward, yet so unique. It's just the two colors, the maple leaf, and that's it. That's what you get, and you know it when you see it. Very striking.
And all Canadians. So when some group comes along and makes some little modification to the maple leaf flag, you know, adding some little feature to make it more representative of gays or French Canadians or whatever, they're really betraying the purpose of the Canadian flag, which was to be a symbol of unity for all Canadians.
I see his point, absolutely. I'd be curious to hear what other Canadians think about that idea. About not meddling with the design of the Canadian flag. What do Canadians as a whole think of this? Very interesting.
Speaking of Canadian history, here is a flag from Canada's past, known as the Pearson Pendant. See, in the old days, Canada's flag looked like this, or at least something like this.
Right, when it was much closer related to the British Empire and all that.
The precise design changed a lot, which is one of the reasons why it was not very popular. In the 20th century, various Canadian governments made various half-hearted attempts to create a new Canadian flag, but none of these really went anywhere. So
wasn't there was there a contest to design the Canadian flag? Am I remembering this correctly?
in 1964, the new Prime Minister of Canada, Lester Pearson, got frustrated with all of this, and he was like, fine, I'll just invent a new Canadian flag on my own. And then one day he got up and he was just like, okay, check this out. I've come up with this. This should be the new flag of Canada.
No, a contest may have had something to do with it, but I do remember It was just this one guy who whipped up this design that was just brilliant, and everyone was like, hey, yeah, this is it.
Canada. It's got 3 maple leafs in the middle because the maple leaf is the symbol of Canada, and then we've got these 2 blue bars on either side because Canada borders 2 oceans. This was not popular. Even though a lot of Canadians wanted a new flag, there was not a lot of support for the idea that the Prime Minister should just unilaterally come up with one on his own. Hence why this thing quickly got the dismissive nickname of the Pearson Pendant.
It's honestly not too far off, though, from what the flag ended up being. The idea is here. Interesting.
Pearson eventually...
Interesting that so many people didn't like it. I think they just didn't like the idea of the Prime Minister getting to be the de facto person who decided. That it was more like, hey, that's not how we should do it.
Back down, and his flag didn't go anywhere, but it is still a common symbol of a period of time in Canadian history known as the flag debate. What Prime Minister Pearson wound up doing in the aftermath is what all good political leaders do when faced with a difficult decision: dump responsibility on some committee. And in October of 1964, the Flag Committee came up with 3 finalists. The Pearson
Okay, there was a contest, and there were a couple finalists, including this flag here. Interesting.
flag, the flag that wound up winning.
Yeah, I mean, look at it. That is... And it has a slightly different, more like geometric leaf, which is pretty cool, honestly.
And this number.
Right.
This weird-looking flag is another popular symbol of the flag debate because of what a hideous abomination it is.
So some people in Canada to this day still bring up these older flag designs just to, as a sign of the times back then, of the history of it.
In fact, that's even what they called it at the time. Diefenbaker's abomination.
That just reminded me of the only other flag design I'm familiar with in America is the Confederate flag from the American Civil War. That is the #1 flag you see in America, besides the American flag, would be the Confederate flag, which has a lot of meaning behind it, and a lot of meaning that actually a lot of Americans don't like when people fly that flag. They view it a very specific way. Anyway, it just reminded me of that other flag in America.
After former Conservative Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, who had been very demanding that the new Canadian flag include references to Canadian history, which is obviously a lot easier said than done. Talking of old Canadian flags, it is interesting that the pre-1964 Canadian flag is still part of Canadian culture today, although the symbolism is now a lot different.
This flag right here is still a part of Canadian culture. This one really, to me, brings back that connection between the United Kingdom and Canada. Is that kind of its purpose in the modern day? Or just the history behind it?
At some point, the old Canadian flag, which is also known as the Red Ensign, was kind of co-opted by fringe right-wing groups in Canada. And this is the context in which you are most likely to see it today, you know, like at anti-immigrant rallies and stuff.
So now you mostly see the Red Ensign associated with different political parties, something like that?
Because of all of the overt British symbolism, it has kind of been reimagined as a symbol of, like, Anglo pride or even supremacy, which is one of the reasons why it was gotten rid of in the first place. I would say that these...
Okay. There's obviously a lot of nuance that I'm not really culturally aware of around some of these flags, so I'll try to understand a bit, but I don't think unless you're a Canadian that you can really truly understand the meaning behind some of this, but I kind of get it.
These days, it kind of occupies a cultural space similar to the Confederate flag in the US.
Okay, I was actually wondering about that. Is this in that same spot as the American Confederate flag, where a lot of people view it a certain way, and it's a negative way, to be honest?
I mean, it obviously doesn't have nearly the same sort of historic racial baggage, but it is used in a similar kind of way by a similar kind of person. All right, now let's go back to the Aboriginal people of Canada for a second. As I alluded to before, there has never really been a unifying flag for the Aboriginal people of this country, although there have been some modified maple leaf flags that have kind of served that purpose. Another popular choice, however, is this flag here, which is sometimes called the Mohawk warrior flag.
You know, something that's really sticking out to me is how the depictions of Indians, or we call them Native Americans here, is so similar between Canada and America. The imagery of it all. Did the same people, I mean, were both in North America, was it literally the same groups of people? It would make sense, right? I've just never thought about it. The Native Canadians and the Native Americans. Huh.
You see this flag a lot in the context of protests by Native Canadians. It's thus sort of associated with a certain kind of like indigenous rights militancy. The sort of Aboriginal activists who blockade roads or occupy buildings and this sort of thing. It first became mainstream in the 1980s.
Wow, this is actually used quite a bit by these groups, huh? This is not really a big thing in America, although I'm sure these groups probably have a flag. You know, most every society comes up with some sort of symbol to represent themselves, so I'd have to actually look into that for America. Huh.
80s, when a lot of actual Mohawk Indians in Canada and the United States were engaging in this sort of protest. But these days, I would say it has sort of become a more generic symbol of the indigenous rights movement in North America, if maybe on the more extreme end. A softer symbol of the native rights movement in Canada would be this flag here.
Oh, well, this is the infinity symbol in America.
With this big infinity symbol on it. This is the flag of the Métis people of Canada, who are basically mixed race folk of Aboriginal and white background.
Really? That's so interesting. Yeah, we don't have anything like this stuff that I'm aware of. I might be ignorant to the subject. I'm sure I am, actually, in the United States. But it makes me think.
Determining exactly who is or isn't a true Métis person in Canada is a subject of increasing contention in this country. But for the purposes of this, what is important to know is that they have just been a historically well-organized community in Canada with a lot of unique symbols, including the flag. Other ethnic minority groups in Canada have flags of their own as well. In one of my other videos, I think I talked about how the Canadian government has made flags for all of the different French-Canadian communities.
French-Canadian communities. Look at all this. These are cool, too. Very striking designs. Why is every flag in Canada more interesting than any other flag I've ever seen anywhere? With the color schemes, the designs, I know there's a deep meaning behind each and every one of these that I'm not aware of, but just besides that, just looking from a purely artistic point of view, if you will, they're beautiful.
Across the country. I personally think these flags are a little pointless. They're certainly...
Oh my god. Okay. That's very straightforward of him to say. Do most Canadians think these are pointless? These are like French-Canadian subsection flags, or is that pointless, or are they respected, or what? What's the deal here? I don't know.
Extremely obscure, just given how small the community of French Canadians generally is outside of Quebec, with the exception of this flag here, which I would say is reasonably well known.
I've never seen this flag before, but is this not the French flag? Oh goodness, I have to Google it. Oh boy, please be the French flag. Please be the French flag. Okay, oh my goodness. Yes, I think I'm in luck. My brain cells are working. Anyway, okay.
This is the flag of the French-Canadian people of Canada's Atlantic provinces.
Okay, so French-Canadian people of a province that I've never really been aware of or heard of, but now I know.
Also known as the Acadians. It is obviously just the French flag with a little star on it. The star represents Catholicism, which was historically a bigger part of French-Canadian culture than I would say it is today. Alright, so here is an obscure flag you will sometimes see flying from the top of Canadian buildings.
I've never seen this flag ever. Oh, it's a lion with a crown holding a maple leaf. That's actually awesome. Just design-wise.
This is the flag of the Governor-General of Canada. The Governor-General is the representative of the British monarch in Canada, and as a result, the Canadian government has some traditions for that office that are very similar to the traditions that the British have for their queen. And
so that singular office in Canada, that position has its own flag. That's really cool. It's more of like not a coat of arms, but certainly a symbol of that position. Pretty cool symbol, too.
And one of these traditions is that when the Governor-General is in a building, you are supposed to take down the Canadian flag and put up the Governor-General's flag.
Oh, that would be so annoying. I wonder if they actually do that.
Instead, the same is true with all of the lieutenant governor generals of all of Canada's provinces.
Oh
But
my
considering
gosh. Oh my gosh. There's like 30 people that you'd have to take down the Canadian flag, put up their flag. What if they have to run across the street and get a hot dog? You got to take the flag back down, put up the Canadian flag. It's a nightmare. I wonder if they actually do this. I'd believe it.
that most Canadians wouldn't know who their lieutenant governor is if they ran over them, these flags are like super duper obscure.
Okay, so most Canadians are not even familiar with these flags. I don't feel quite so bad anymore.
Reflecting her status as our colonial master, the Queen has her own Canadian flag too. Hardcore monarchists in this country would probably recognize this flag.
So, with the passing of Queen Elizabeth, did this flag represent her as a person? Queen Elizabeth II's flag? Will there be a king? Well, I mean, there's an E. I'm seeing an E for Elizabeth. So will King Charles have his own flag and all of that? Very interesting. Another flag that represents a position, a high-ranking position in Canada. I don't think we have a special flag for our president or our vice president or secretary of state or any of that. I'd love to know, though. I've probably, like a lot of Canadians, I've never looked this stuff up before. Huh.
At the flag store, I was able to buy this little bumper sticker of it. I guess you can put it on your car if you're really into the monarchy, which I am not. Lastly, let us talk about some of the regional flags of Canada. So this flag here is the flag of the province of Newfoundland.
Very geometrical. So the provinces do have individual flags. That's pretty cool.
But before it joined Canada...
So does that mean people are more familiar with these flags than living in the different provinces? Maybe. In Canada? Maybe more aware of this?
In 1949, Newfoundland was its own weird little country with its own set of patriotic symbols. One of them was this flag here, the so-called pink, white, and green. It was never the official flag of Newfoundland, just a sort of nationalistic symbol associated with the place. No one really seems to agree where it came from or what it means. Its exact origins are sort of lost to time. It sort of had its heyday in like the late 19th century, but then in the 20th century, everybody basically stopped caring about it. Until that is...
Does every province have a flag, or just Newfoundland, because it was kind of its own country at one point?
The Newfoundland tourism industry needed some symbol of the past to dig up so that they could stick it on all of their kitschy Republic of Newfoundland merchandise. In 2004, the Conservative Prime Minister of Newfoundland, Danny Williams, suggested getting rid of this flag and replacing it with the pink, white, and green. But that idea was terribly unpopular, so he quietly abandoned it. I suppose the Newfoundlanders did not want their provincial flag to be a souvenir. And speaking of souvenirs, check out this set of stickers I got in Vancouver the other day. This is what is known as the Cascadia flag.
Is this represent Vancouver?
Cascadia refers to the geographic area around the Cascade Mountain Range, which runs from here in southern British Columbia to northern California. Some people...
Wait, what? We're getting into the United States now. This affects me. So rare that this directly affects me. This is a flag representing this particular region of British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, California? Really? I never knew about this, but it's a mountainous region, or the mountains define it? Huh.
Some people say that this area, also known as the Pacific Northwest, has enough culture and history in common to form its own country, the Republic of Cascadia. So in the early 1990s...
I've never heard of this. That's really interesting.
Some guy made a flag for Cascadia, which is what this is. Sometimes people call this the flag of the Cascadian separatist movement, but that's really not a thing. It's really just a symbol for people that have a lot of Pacific Northwest pride, you know, like surfers and mountain bikers and folks like that. They sell a lot of merch with stuff on it out here. I personally think it's a pretty ugly flag.
Hey, whoa! Hey, I mean, it does kind of look like he took that tree from like a Google image or something, and then removed the background, but didn't do a great job. Okay, I should stop. Since it's part American, I feel like I can critique it a little bit.
With these two dark colored bars and this kind of gross looking tree in the middle. Check out this much classier version I made using Adobe Illustrator. And you know who taught me how to use Adobe Illustrator? Why it's today.
Probably Skillshare is sponsor. I'm gonna skip this part.
Skillshare subscriber of knowledge, a fun evening tradition. Like this one class people want.
Man, this ad goes on for a while.
I try today. And let us look at just one more flag before we go. This flag here, the US-Canadian friendship flag.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I can get on board with this. The US-Canadian friendship flag. I've never seen this. This is fun. I feel like no one knows about this flag, though. I've never seen this flag before. I don't mind it, though. It's pretty funny.
This is a flag I often see for sale in very tourism-heavy parts of big Canadian cities.
Yeah, the places in Canada and the United States that are like bordering or really close to the border, I bet sell these flags because it makes you get way more tourists that are like either that are visiting Canada or visiting the United States, so they're very much on the a unifying flag for us, how fun kind of train.
It is obviously supposed to primarily appeal to American tourists, who obviously like the idea of buying a souvenir that celebrates their friendship with their neighbors to the north.
I bet American tourists love this flag. I'd buy this flag, I gotta be honest.
Of course, a lot of Canadians, I think, are probably too insecure to own one of these things. Not me, though. I want this on my casket when I die. I will see you all next week.
Okay, that was a good video. That was by JJ McCullough. McCullough? JJ McCullough. I liked that. I liked that a lot. Wow. I never thought there was so much to learn about flags, but flags are really fascinating when you get into it. And from something I learned in this video was, yeah, you can have flags not just to represent geographical areas, but groups of areas, groups of people, an individual position. Never knew about that. I was thinking maybe this flag would touch on some of the more obvious Canadian, like provinces and regions and their flags, but that might be another video that I'll watch at some point in the future. But as far as obscure Canadian flags go, this was very interesting. I obviously was not aware of any of this, and I feel like a lot of Canadians probably aren't aware of a fair bit of this as well. But it's very interesting stuff to know. I enjoyed that. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a comment or give it a like. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada, Canadian culture, Canadian things, stuff I've never seen ever before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.